So obviously there's been no football for you to commentate over. How's your role changed? And have you found anything other to do in the meantime?
Funnily enough, quite a lot of people have been asking me to do interviews and talk about football when there's been no football. So I've actually become more of a media hack, as it were, than an actual commentator. But um, funnily enough, it's I've had loads of opportunity to do all the things that you put on a list, like sorting out the attic or moving a cupboard or something like that. And actually, I've not got around to doing hardly any of it. There's so much to do. The way the world has changed, I'm sure everybody has experienced it as well. You know, in the old days, you used to go out shopping for an hour. Now it takes you 2 hours because you've got a queue. You've got to go to a couple of shops to try and find the stuff. Well, that was how it was when the crisis first started. But over here in Germany, it's going much better for us right now.
Yeah. And with the Bundesliga set to return, what's your opinion on this? Do you feel like it's the right time, or do you think it should have been held back a little longer?
Well, I think Jurgen Klopp got it right the other day when, he said, who am I to tell you if it's safe or not? That's not my job. So I put trust in the German government that has handled the situation to this point very well.
Yeah.
Hopefully they haven't bound to pressure to start things moving again in those sort of terms. Everybody, for the most part, was very sensible about the way they went about things here with social distancing, and people stayed at home. I live in Cologne, which is a city of 1 million people.
Yeah.
And it was very quiet. We were lucky enough that we weren't restricted to how many times a day we could go out. So if the weather was good, you could go and sit in a park as long as you observed the right sort of social distancing.
Yeah.
My own personal opinion is that sooner or later someone's going to have to come out of hiding, as it were. Otherwise we will just stay like this for 4 years until a vaccine is found, or however long it takes to find a vaccine. I remember reading recently that polio was the quickest vaccine that was found, and it took 3 or 4 years to come on to worldwide use after being tested and everything. I mean, obviously that's a long time ago now that when that happened, and perhaps they'll be quicker now. But I think each country has to make up its own mind as to whether it's safe or not to do that. And if you want to talk about the Bundesliga, you come and talk to me. If you want to talk about virology, you go and talk to a virologist. I really don't know. I'm hoping it's the right decision. I look at the numbers around in Cologne, and in Cologne, the numbers of people infected and the number of people that have died from it haven't been massive. But obviously, if it's your family that's been hit by that, then it doesn't really matter one way or the other. But I think generally, if it wasn't doable, I don't think the government would have given it the green light.
Yeah. And how have the Bundesliga handled it in terms of you? Like, have you had conversations with them about your safety when you come back, or has it just been more generalised than that?
No, they have been. There's a good German word called vernünftig, which is they've been very correct and proper about the whole thing. You also have to remember that a lot of us are freelancers, so they're not. There's no retainer involved. So if there's no work, there's no work. So, but in the times that there were right at the very beginning, it was very well done, and we had separating screens and masks for coming in and out of the building when we were working in the building in Cologne. And similar will take place, I'm sure, in a couple of weeks' time when the Bundesliga kicks off again. I've actually been recording. You're talking to me now in my walk-in wardrobe, which has been turned into a studio of various kinds. But with the right equipment, I have been taking part. The Bundesliga has been one of the few leagues, I think, that's been actually producing new product in terms of its weekly broadcasts and special shows over this time, which has been exciting to be a part of, and actually sitting here at home rather than sitting in a studio just around the corner. The difference isn't much different, except the tea is better here.
I can imagine. And they've they've announced some safety measures as well with the return. So one including no more than 300 people in the stadium at once. Do you think these are all doable, or do you think there should be more?
No, I think it's certainly doable. When you think that the fewer people, the better. You're going to have the 22 men on the field, plus the referee and the assistant referees, plus the subs that come on or that are all sat together. Obviously, one gap between each seat. I'm fairly sure that was what we'll be seeing in the coming weeks. There's all the backroom staff, of course, the physios, and a lot of the journalists will. Especially the commentators, we won't be in the stadium. We'll broadcast off tube, as it's called. So to be honest, I'm not even sure whether there'll be co-commentators in the room with us or whether they'll be next door. And we'll look at them through a glass panel and go, "What do you think of that?" So that could be we haven't. I'm not in that loop at the moment, but nothing would surprise me. But it's all doable. Necessity is the mother of invention, and I'm sure that the DFL will find a way to make sure that as few people as possible are in the stadium. Yeah. Because it's behind closed doors, of course, you don't have any of the stewarding or anything like that to worry about. Yeah, I think it's doable, and I think. To be actually absolutely honest, when you see shops that are full of people, big shops that have got quite a few people in them, you've probably got just as much risk of catching something there as you would on the field. Again, I'm not an expert, but the players being kept in sort of isolation will also help that. It's one of those scenarios that nobody really knows because we've never had anything like this in our lifetime or in the history of football. So it is a bit of they're taking a punt, and let's hope it's rewarded by a successful completion to the season.
Yeah. And do you think the other major leagues in Europe should follow suit and announce a return, or do you think they should be held back a little longer?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, I think, as I said before, I think every country has to make their own decision. A lot across social media, there's been this image of a burning building, especially in the UK. It's sort of like, oh well, yeah, we've reached. It's not. There's not much more to burn now. Everybody can go back in the building. I do think that every country will have to take a close look at the circumstances and the level of infections that they got. I mean, for instance, and again, this is just my own personal opinion. As we stand at the moment, with the UK having the newspapers full of, we're going to get back to normal starting from Monday, there's going to be all these. I don't think the UK is ready. There's no way is the UK in the same position that Germany is. So I'm sure, again, governments have to be very careful about what they do in these situations, because the wrong move could really mess things up substantially.